If you like this video, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell icon to get the latest updates.
So today will be a module 1. So in the module 1, if you see the content which I received, obviously it starts with master data, but I will not start with the master data, because if you start with the master data, what are the different features of transport management that gets that will obviously be has to cover first of all, because when we start with the overview part of any transport management, it is very important to know why we have transport management in today's supply chain process. What are the different impacts and pros and benefits we have when we are implementing transport management? What are the features and scope and also the deployment options we have for transport management? So these are the different features and things one needs to know before you actually go deep dive into the system. Okay. So today we'll try to cover that part so that you can have an idea of what are the pillars and components that makes up transportation management. So when I say pillars and components, like if you are out from background, you know, like we have got 4 different pillars, right? Like for example, we have purchasing, inventory, account determination, and logistics LIV process. Similarly, for SD also, we have some pillars like starting with the order management, delivery management, shipment. Okay. Similarly, in TM also, we have got different pillars and process components that fits to the end-to-end integration or end-to-end scenario for TM. Okay. So before I go into it, first of all, let us understand what is the implication or importance of transportation. So anyone want to basically based on your, because I think all of you are quite experienced in the supply chain process, why do you feel transportation is important in today's supply chain? Anyone who wants to start with the, I know I'm asking the question straight away, but maybe more question means more interaction. So if you'd like to add something to that. Why transportation is important?
So Anil here. So I believe transportation is the backbone of supply chain management. The basic objective of supply chain is to reduce the cost and optimize the profit. So if you have like well-defined and good transportation, this is help us to reduce the cost. And also we can, cost is not always about in terms of money, it is also in terms of time as well. So having a good transportation, optimized transportation will save money as well as the time. This is my understanding.
Yes, I think you're going a very good answer. Anyone wants to add on it? Okay. So as you said rightly, that it is considered as the backbone of the supply chain. Obviously, it is very aptly answered, because no process will work without the use of transportation services behind the scenes. So when you talk about different types of industries, like for example, if you are planning to manufacture goods from different components, or if you are shipping the goods from an online store, or if you are getting any, you're procuring anything from a supermarket, everywhere, every processes, whether it's for any across different industry LOBs, you'll find that if transportation is not working, the entire supply chain tends to falter down. Okay. And transportation is such an important component, because it's not only about, delivering or moving your product from one point to another, but it is also about meeting the different types of commitments from different customers, right? So if a customer is telling me that I want a product on this date at this location, it is very important from the shipper perspective that I need to make arrangement for the products and goods to be delivered to the customer, right? So to able to daily procure your goods or sell your goods, okay, you need a module which is actually responsible for making the goods movement from a point to point. So whenever we talk about transportation, it is very important that it's always a point-to-point transfer. So when I say a point-to-point transfer, that means it always pertains to location. Because today transportation always has 2 different points. Point A means is the source, that means from where the shipment originates. And point B is the delivery, where the shipment has to be delivered to the customer. That is the final destination location. So throughout the entire content, you will see that I'll be using source location and destination location as the concept or as the terminology. And whenever I talk about source location and destination location, it is not only about transportation management, it is also talking about SAP transportation management also. Okay. So today managing transports are done across multiple modules. I don't know whether you have heard about it's not, although SAP is considered as a market leader, but there are different software products which have been launched in the market. Like if you talk about Oracle, if you talk about JD Edwards. So these are the different software modules which have been implemented in the market in order to track and trace the entire transportation process. The transportation process is not only the movement of the product. Transportation process will also ensure the movement of the product respecting the capacity of the resource. So when I say the capacity of the resource, that means you need some means to move the transport, right? So if you're moving from point A to point B, you may use a truck. Or if you are doing any type of long distance haul or long distance shipment process, you need a sea, mode of transport, sea or vessel to move it across. So it is very important that whenever the transportation process starts, you need to know the means by which the transportation needs to happen. So if I now just rephrase the definition of transportation, it is actually the movement of your cargo from source to destination using a specified means of transport. So these three things, source location, destination location, cargo, and means of transport. So these four dots make up your entire transportation process because all are very tightly integrated with each other. And without this, the transportation process cannot be realized in practice. So if you see my first slide, so in my first slide, you see that there are different types of, the shipper, you can see that. So before I go into it, anyone wants to highlight who are my shippers? Anyone knows who is a shipper? Anyone?
Shipper can be an organization or it's a like where the production of a goods happen. So shipper is responsible for like providing the materials to the good customer.
Yes. Okay. You're correct. Any other thing what you want to add? The terminology is very important in TM. So you should be very much clear what is because these are the different functions which is played by different entities in any supply chain process, right? So you should know what are the different, who are the basically the partners in the entire transportation process. So anyone wants to add more to what is a shipper? No one. Okay. So you can say shipper is also actually called as a consignor. Why they are consignor? Because they are usually the supplier or a owner of a commodity is being shipped. Okay. So if I am supplying or if I am owning a particular commodity which is going to be sent across to my customer, then I am a shipper. So whenever you are working for any shipper scenario, okay, and whenever transportation management is being used, please note that a shipper scenario always needs to trigger the shipment process using ECC, right? So you use the ECC as a source system to trigger any shipper scenario. So that's why you see in the figure in the left hand side, if you see my shipper is there, and from the shipper, this is pointing to suppliers. This is pointing to logistics providers. This is pointing to customers as well as carrier. So all the entire transportation process which originates from a shipping point or from a shipper scenario is actually interlinked with all these other business partner functions. Obviously, for example, supplier. Why supplier is important? Because supplier is my vendor location. And whenever any type of movement of cargo happens from the vendor location to my receiving plant, you can use transportation management. So that is also called as an inbound freight. Similarly, whenever you are transporting any commodity or goods from my shipping point to my customer location, it is called as an outbound freight, or rather an outbound scenario. And in order to perform both the inbound and the outbound transportation process, we need some business partners who are also called as a carrier or LSP, who will actually be used to do the transportation on behalf of the shipper. So that's why you see the connecting link between shipper, carrier, LSP, customer, and supplier. Now, in many projects, you may have come across that you are only implementing transport management for outbound and not for inbound. Because inbound is something which is actually the responsibility of the supplier, but SAP has given the provision and the option also to monitor the freight which is actually leaving the supplier premises and being received into your plant. Okay, and now what are the benefits of SAP TM system? So as I told you before, that we have got different pillars of transportation management. Now, before I come into SAP transportation management, you can see like there are different core features which are available within any transportation process. One is the order management. Second is the transportation planning. Third is the transportation execution. And fourth is the charge management and settlement. So I will come into each of these boxes in details. But when I talk about the different pillars of transportation management, I'm talking mainly about these four pillars. Okay. And these four pillars are so integrated with each other in TM. That's why, you know, without these pillars, TM will not be able to execute it end to end. And there are many benefits on using these boxes. And that's why SAP Transport Management is actually the future roadmap for any of your transportation process. You know that, you know, in our early R3 days, we used to use the ELITRA process, right? Any one of you who know ELITRA, Logistics Execution Model, has anyone worked on it before?
Yes, I have worked on it.
Okay.
This is Manish.
Yeah, hi Manish. So Manish, you means in fact for everyone, like you must be knowing, like in standard integration of SD or MM with ELITRA, once you create your order and delivery, there was a process to trigger your shipment document, right?
Yeah.
So that shipment document, So that shipment document creation along with the shipment cost was an important integral part of your transportation. But there were a lot of loopholes in that process. When I say loophole, you did not have a very extensive planning process. You did not have any extensive tracking and tracing process of your shipment. The charge management, or rather the charge components which you have to pay to the carrier, was somehow mixed with the sales pricing process, and hence you did not have any flavor of a transportation cost component being used. In addition to that, there were a lot of integrations involved. So I'll talk into all these details, where there are a lot of integration you need to connect with different other system, other components of SAP, which we did not have in ELITRA. And also it was not possible in ELITRA also to combine your inbound and outbound shipment in one truck. So all these different features and benefits give SAP Transportation Management a big edge as compared to the ELITRA model. And that's why, you know, SAP has thought about of, replacing or rather removing the entire ELITRA module with the SAP TM module. Although SAP's roadmap says 2027, that will be the end time maintenance of ELITRA module. But what I have heard is that it's being extended till 2030, keeping in mind that huge amount of SAP clients are still in ERP and they have not moved to S4HANA and the corresponding other TM landscape. Okay. Now, what are the benefits when you are moving from ELITRA to SAP TM? So first of all, first point is saying tracking and tracing all shipment. Can anyone tell me why this is important? Why track and trace is important? Anyone? What do you mean by track and trace? From the wording itself, anyone has any idea?
To have an efficient supply chain, to know where my goods are at any point of time in the
Yes.
end-to-end supply chain execution.
Yes, right. See, it is a very common feature. Like for example, we are suppose an end user. As an end user or as a consumer, we place lot of orders in the online portals, right? And when we place an order, you know, every order gets saved and they generate a tracking ID, right? And using the tracking ID, you can enter the portal and you want to find out what is the status of your shipment, when it is coming. If it has not come, then you can escalate to the next level. So this is a day-to-day feature as a consumer way to it. Similarly, customers who want that, you know, the transportation should arrive at their premises on time. Even some of the customers pay extra money to have these logon credentials so that they know that when they are going to receive the product. So in order to have a visibility of your shipment, to have a visibility of the different milestones being tracked and traced, to have a visibility of whether your shipment will reach on time, all this information is important for the particular customer. It's not only about customer, but it's also for the shipper, because shipper also wants to know whether the shipment which is being handed over to the carrier is on time, because if it is not on time, it will certainly impact the service level between the agreement you have with your customer. And secondly, also, you know, sometimes if you are not delivering the product on time, the customers may charge you some penalty for that, right? So it is very important as a shipper that you know where is your shipment. For a particular shipment, you want to know whether the loading process has started, the loading process has ended, your departure has been done, your arrival has been completed, proof of delivery has been reported. So these are the different milestones of your shipment process. And all these milestones needs to be tracked and traced. So the real-time updates or visibility to all these milestones of tracking and tracing is possible using the tracking and tracing shipment process within TM. The next part is the international trade. So international trade, dangerous goods, EWM integration. So these are the different other integration applications which you have with TM. So transportation management, basically, for example, if I talk about dangerous goods, so if you are transporting any type of goods, for example, mainly for chemical industry, pharma industry, mining industry, these goods really play an important role, because the transportation of dangerous goods should not be mixed with a normal transport with other products. Okay, because in case, you know, somehow if they are transported in the same compartment or in the same truck or trailer, and if the goods are damaged, then obviously it can have a lasting impact on the entire transportation process. So it is very important to know that whenever you are transporting a dangerous goods, whether your particular carrier or a shipment who is responsible for doing the shipment has the necessary equipment, has the necessary truck to do the shipment of the goods. So for that, dangerous goods is integrated with TM. When I say integrated, that means whenever any type of transportation starts with dangerous goods, there are certain checks which is done. And in case the checks are successful, then only the execution part can begin, or else it will always be in block status. Okay. Similarly, you can also have an integration with your warehousing content. So in warehouse, you know, we do a lot of picking, packing, staging, good issue. All these are core functionalities of warehouse. But in case all the packing, picking processes within warehouse is planned by the transportation planning in TM, in that case, we need to have an integration between TM and EWM. Similarly, whenever you are doing any type of cross-border shipment, cross-border means international shipments, which is actually extending beyond the borders of the country. In that case, you know, there are certain declaration you need to do to the customs authorities. You need to declare them what is the value of the goods. You need to declare to them from where to where your shipment is moving. You need to tell them whether you are doing any security filings or transit filings, because filings is also done. So all these are part of the international trade and regulations. Okay. And in case the customs authorities are not allowing you to cross the border because maybe the business partner with whom you are dealing is blacklisted. Okay, so there are certain screening process being done to ensure that the business partners are correct enough to allow you to do the business. So in such cases, the execution can be blocked. So it is very important that when you are crossing the international border, you should have a declaration from the customs, and these customs processes differ from countries to countries. Again, TM comes into the picture there. Okay. Similarly, you have got a very important analytical contents with TM. So analytical content means there are a lot of stakeholders who are not interested into day-to-day operational process, but they want to know how is the shipment going for them, whether the shipment is earning profit for them, whether it's a cost for them. So the profitability part, the different expense reporting part, or you can also have an overview of who are the carriers who are delivering the product on time, who are the carriers who are delivering always late. So there are certain reports, analytical reports or KPIs, which is required to monitor your entire transportation process. So for that, we have a strong integration between TM and analytics, which will help you to provide all these ad hoc reporting capabilities. And finally, on a day, in a supply chain process, collaboration is the most important component. So when I say collaboration, it is not only collaboration with your customer, that is obviously required, but also you need to collaborate with the carrier. So carrier means they are the person who are actually helping you to move the transport from point A to point B. So a carrier can be an LSP. So LSPs are a bigger umbrella where not only they are responsible for doing the planning and execution, but they also have warehouse facilities, storage facilities. So either the carrier or the LSP, communication or collaboration is very important for any transportation process. And for that, the communication can be done through web service. It can be done through A2A or B2B communication. It can be done through EDI. And the SAP has also provided some standard portal options where the carrier can collaborate with the transportation management partner. So these are the different on a higher shell, the benefits which you get when you are implementing transport management. Any question on this?
I have one question here. LSP, I understand that it manages transport and it also has warehousing facilities to manage the supply chain of the shipper. But what about carriers? Carriers is something independent from logistics service providers, or I think carrier are the vehicle resources we are talking about, or is it something else?
No, basically there are there's a subtle difference between the carrier and the LSP. So when we talk about, for example, you are a customer, okay, and suppose, or I am a customer, I am transporting my goods from Germany to US, for example, and I want DHL or FedEx to transport the goods on my behalf, right? So what you will do, you will call up the customer service of DHL and DHL will do the transport on your behalf. So if you see in that way, DHL responsibility is the core business is the transportation, because they are selling transportation service. Okay. So they are also, maybe they don't have the assets with them, or they may have an asset, but their main purpose is to not only pick up the goods and deliver. Their main purpose is to plan the transport, execute the transport. They do all the custom documentation, custom clearance. Okay. They do also a lot of brokering services. They are also responsible for storing the product in case, the pickup and the delivery time window is violated. So in other words, LSP is at a very much higher level. And sometimes, there are LSPs who are actually also working in closely with shipper to plan and execute the entire shipment. Okay. So such is the power of LSP. But when we talk about carrier is something, so a LSP can also be a carrier, because ultimately responsibility is to do the transport, right? But the carrier in terms of, final performing its functions is not as much huge as compared to LSP. So what are the carrier? Carrier like the forwarding agents, like if you see in any Elytra module, you have carrier in your shipment document. Their main responsibility will be that, okay, once a shipper has created an agreement with them, they will just come and pick up the goods from the shipping point and they will just deliver to the customer location. Okay, so the amount of work, the amount of the responsibilities of a carrier is much less as compared to LSP. So LSP's work is a different industry. Okay, they have a different industry which is also called as a freight forwarder industry. But when it comes to carrier, the main objective of carrier is to just pick up and deliver the goods.
Okay, I have one more question over here. Many a times we have heard about the word 3PL, 4PL. What exactly is that? Is that logistics service provider or where exactly we see that in this process?
Yes, in fact, I have a slide on that. So maybe if you can just hold your question for 5-10 minutes, I will answer that. I have a slide for that.
Fine.
Okay.
Fine.
I'll just answer that. Any question on this slide before I move into the next slide?
No question, we can move ahead.
Okay. Okay. So if you see here that there are basically 4 pillars, if I say in that way, for transportation management. Just as we have got multiple pillars in ECC, similarly transport management also has all these pillars. So the first pillar is the order management. The second pillar is the planning. The third pillar is the execution part. And the fourth pillar is the charge management part. And as I told you, all these pillars are dependent and integrated with each other. So you cannot leave one aside. Obviously, execution is something which you can still, do it without it, but the other parts you cannot leave without it. So when I will explain to you, you will understand why this is important. So when I see the order management part, so let's not figure out on the right hand side. Let me just explain you first of all the process, and then we'll see what are the different objects which makes up each pillar. Okay. So when I say order management, so in today, for example, when you are planning to move a transport from point A to point B, that means I am moving my transport from a shipper location to my customer location, right? So as a part of this transport, how do my transportation management knows that this transport, this order or this delivery needs to be integrated with my TM? So you need to have some ways, you need to have some activation criteria based on which my transport management system will know that, okay, this order or this delivery needs to be integrated. Okay, so every time our order or delivery is created in ECC, a transportation demand or a transportation requirement is generated in transportation management system. And that is what we call order management. So for example, if we're talking about purchasing scenario, sales scenario, subcontracting scenario, or consignment scenario, various other scenarios where your order or delivery is in place, it may be that out of 10 orders in the system, you only want to integrate TM with 6 orders or 6 delivery types, because maybe the third party order need not to be integrated in TM, or maybe the consignment fill up process is not required to be integrated with TM. So what are the different orders or deliveries for which integration is required? That is called as an order management. And this order management is actually triggered from different documents. If you are considering a shipper scenario, so that's where you can use sales order, purchase order. You can also do it from delivery. But if you are considering an LSP scenario, so LSP do not require ERP documents to start off. They generally start their processes with forwarding order. So based on these different order or delivery documents, the requirement or the demand for generating a transportation process execution is done in the order management. Okay. Any question on this order management part? Clear to everyone?
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay. So once you are doing this order management part, basically what is the effect of order management? So the main effect of order management is to create a planning document. Okay. So this is called as a freight unit building. So the freight unit building, or rather the freight unit, is the object which is technically created, which will actually tell you that my transportation order and delivery has to be integrated with TM. So this freight unit actually answers three questions: what you are going to transport, where you are going to transport, and when you are going to transport. So these three questions are answered by my freight unit. The freight unit is always created automatically. So they can be created once the order or delivery is created and saved. And once the freight unit is created, that will trigger my subsequent process in TM. So whenever we see that freight unit is not created, then that calls for an investigation as part of the AMS or whatever project you're working on. Because unless a freight, because as I told you, it answers three questions, right? What you want to transport. That means whatever product is there in your freight unit, that product information needs to be captured there. Where you want to transport. That means I need to have my source location as well as I need to have a destination location in my transport management system in freight unit. So my source location is really my shipping point from where the shipment originates, and the destination location is my customer location where the shipment needs to be delivered to. So under the planning section, we have a freight unit creation required. And this freight unit is also called as a planning document because the planning will start once the freight unit gets created. Okay. So when I say planning, so any questions so far from anyone?
Could you just repeat this freight unit building concept once again, like
Yes.
how it moves from order management to planning?
Yes. So for example, when I'm creating my freight, unit, so let me just show you in the quick in the system quickly. Okay. So suppose I'm creating a sales order. Okay. Sorry. So suppose I'm creating a sales order. Okay, I'm just using a sales order with reference so that you know from which sales order I'm creating. Just to show you, I'll give you the concept of freight unit. So when you see when I'm creating a sales order, I have my ship to party. I have my material. That means what I need to transport, where I need to transport. So where means my ship to party and my shipping point is there. This is my shipping point. Okay. And then when I click on save, okay. So suppose my sales order got created and now if I click on the delivery. What is the date I used? Just 1 minute. So I just change these dates. Suppose it's on 20th. Suppose I do a delivery of my product on 20th. I do a delivery on 20th. When I'm creating my delivery, you will see if I go into the change or display mode, you will see that this delivery has a status tab here. So this status tab indicates that my delivery is integrated with transport management. So that is the first thing. Now, when I go into details of this tab, so when I click on this TM status tab, for example, I click on this, I will see automatically my freight unit got created. So this freight unit, as I told you, is the starting point of your transportation requirement document in TM, because unless a freight unit is created, you will not get to see from where to where my transport should move. My transport should involve what material and on which date my transport should move. So all this information is there in my freight unit. So freight unit is also called as a planning document. So if you see here, this is my source location. This source location is my shipping point. This destination location is my ship to party. And this is the, the dates by which the delivery has to be done. And this is the, basically the, the product or package which we need to deliver. So without a particular freight unit getting created, so if you see here, you get a stage. Stage means from where to where my shipment needs to move. So the freight unit is a document based on which the entire shipment process originates. That means it's still on a planning phase. Huh? I have not done any physical movement, but I need to send this information to my transport planner so that he can start planning for the shipment movement. So that is what is called as a freight unit.
So one question here, is freight unit more or less like a replica of the delivery document in the transportation management system, or is it also adding any more information at this point in time?
So yeah, so freight unit basically, I'll not say an exact replica, but it actually captures transportation relevant data from delivery documents, if I say in that way. Okay. So because in a delivery document, you will have many data which is more related to the order management part. But at the same time, because delivery is something where your goods movement is planned to occur. So for transportation process, so the transportation relevant info from delivery is passed on to this freight unit. So a freight unit can also be created from sales order. So I will come to that part later on, whether a freight unit can be built from sales or can be built or should be built from delivery. That is a different question. But answering your question, all the transportation relevant info from your delivery is captured in a freight unit. And the freight unit is always created automatically. And this freight unit is the thing based on which your transportation planner does the planning. So he has to plan the movement of the product that is possible only through the freight unit. Okay? Yeah, any question?
Yes, I have a question here, Anil. Anil here. Is this freight unit is editable? Can we edit after a freight unit is created in this
Yes.
document? No. When I say edit, like, can we add any source location? Can we alter the source location, destination location, anything which we got it from the order management? Can we do that here?
So source location should not be changed, because if you are changing the source location, then the business objective of creating delivery and freight unit gets lost. Because when you are creating a sales order or delivery, your shipping point should always be the source location. Okay. Now, if you are doing a picking from any other point apart from your shipping point, okay, then that must be reflected somewhere, right, in the document. So SAP has given the option where you can always select the stage. So answering your question, it is possible to change the locations. Okay, you can select the select the stage, and you can always insert additional stage or insert any other stages. That is always possible. Okay, that you can always do it. Okay. And there are a lot of other information which you have in freight unit. So once I come into freight unit, I will go field by field level explanation to you so that you can understand why freight unit is so important. Okay.
And later, are you also going to explain the integration part of it, like how this is triggered from ERP
Yes.
and okay.
Everything. Yes. Everything. I'll be covering. Okay. So this freight unit is actually created based on a freight unit building rule. So there is a rule which will define how many freight units will be created. So that rule can be that whether the freight, so suppose in one delivery document you have got 10 different products. Okay. Now whether you want to create a single freight unit or whether you want to create 10 different freight units per delivery document, that is entirely defined and set up by the freight unit building rule. So this freight unit building rule is very important because the entire build up of your freight unit is controlled by the freight unit building rule. And this freight unit building rule you can always see in the freight unit. Okay. So now once my freight unit is there, now my transportation planner comes into the picture as part of the planning process. What he has to do? He has to plan the freight unit. So what is the objective of planning? The objective of planning is ultimately to create a shipment document. Correct? So in order to create a shipment document, basically you need to check how my freight unit is to be moved to my final destination location. Which is the route I need to consider for my most cost optimization process. Which is the preferred carrier I can use so that my freight unit reaches on time. In case costing is my main criteria, I should select the cheapest means of transport or resources available. I can also do always a check if my freight unit is relevant for dangerous goods or not. So all these different checkings, which are the resources who are available to transport the freight unit, all these things are part and parcel of the planning one. So planning is very important in TM. And if you see, there are two inputs to planning. The first input comes from freight unit and the second input comes from the master data, which is nothing but it's your resource. So resource and freight unit are your input to my planning process. And whenever you are doing the planning, the output of planning is your freight order and freight booking, which is nothing but it is a shipment document. Because unless a shipment document is there, you cannot physically move the product, right? So till planning, it's always in the planning. That planning means there is no physical movement of a cargo as of now. So you are just generating the planning processes so that I know which shipment, which freight order, which carrier, which means of transport I should use to do my physical transport from my shipping point to my customer location. And this planning part is actually done in a planning tool called as a transportation cockpit. So transportation cockpit is the planning tool for TM where you physically plan your particular freight unit and create your freight order or freight booking. Okay. And this planning can either be manual or automatic. So manual planning means basically interactive planning. And automatic planning means it's a planning done by the optimizer. Optimizer is an engine which does the planning for you. So either you can adopt a manual process or you can use the optimizer to do the planning on your behalf. But irrespective of whatever planning you want to do, the ultimate objective of planning is to create your shipment document, which in your Elytra word, it's a, which in TM we call it as a freight order and freight booking. So before I come into freight order, freight booking, any question on the planning?
So I can see that freight order and freight booking and planning, there is like two-way communication. So to and fro communication happens. Like any changes in here, then it updates the planning as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other question?
Virendra, I have a general question over here. So what is the difference when we talk about SAP TM connectivity when we are integrating with SAP ECC versus S/4HANA?
I have all your questions in the next slide.
Okay, fine.
Okay. Just maybe if you can just hold for a few more minutes, I will explain to you.
Yeah, sure.
why I'm spending more time on this, because once your flow is clear to you, it will become very, very easy for you to run transportation process. Okay, because that's why I always stress more on process, because technically setting up and running is not a big job. Okay, because all of you are from SAP domains, but running and knowing the process is very important. Okay. I hope it's okay. Till planning, everyone is comfortable. Okay. So then once the planning is done, that means once your freight order. So why these two different terminology? Because I'm calling them both as a shipment document, but then why these two different terminology? The reason is when you are transporting something, you can transport using different means, right? Or different mode of transport. You can transport via road, you can transport via rail, you can transport via sea, you can transport via air, anything. So that's why SAP has come up with this very unique nature of differentiating the mode of transport. One, in case you are transporting by road or rail, we call it as a freight order. In case you are transporting by sea or air, we call it as a freight booking. So both the objects are technically same, but the major difference lies in the mode of transport. So this freight order freight booking is actually the replica of your shipment document. So whenever you'll be implementing TM, you actually don't need to worry about whether your shipment is created or not, because in TM the shipment document is replicated as freight order freight book. And this freight order freight booking is also called as an execution document. Why it is called as an execution document? Because your actual or physical execution will begin once your freight order and freight booking is created. It is also called as a subcontracting document because this particular freight order freight booking needs to have a carrier assigned. So because you need someone to execute the freight order freight booking, right? Because just creating freight order freight booking will not start your shipment. You need to assign some agent. You need to assign some carrier to them. So that's why it is also called as a subcontracting document, because a carrier is assigned to such type of business documents. And whenever a freight order freight booking is created, now your shipment can start off. So now you can say that, okay, my shipment is ready to be executed. And how do you execute the shipment? The execution part is done by tracking and tracing through different events. So for example, you can say, okay, my shipment has departed. So departure is an event. My shipment has been loaded. My loading is an event. My shipment has arrived at the final destination. So arrival at destination is an event. My shipment has done a check-in, check-out at the yard. So that is also another event. So all the different events are actually nothing but the milestones of the shipment can be used to do the execution process. You can also specify in your shipment document or your freight order whether your load plan is being done so that your integration with EWM can start off. Okay, whether your whether loading has been done, unloading has been done. So all these are part of your execution process. Okay. So this execution part can be tracked and traced using event management. Okay. So that was the module we have, as well as in case you're working in S/4HANA. S/4HANA basically event management is not part of the execution process, but is part of the is also part of the since EM is not part of the S/4HANA. So there is a cloud-based solution which SAP has launched called as an LBN. So LBN is also called as a logistics business network. So through the LBN also you can actually track and trace the shipment process. Okay. So the execution and and subcontracting is again a very integrated process which starts with your freight order and freight booking. And once the freight order and freight booking is created, another important activity which takes place is that how much my carrier will be paid, right? That is an important part, because this freight order freight booking execution will be accepted by the carrier only when they feel that the amount paid to them for doing the transportation service is okay as per their expectation. So there should be a freight agreement created beforehand with that particular carrier so that once my freight order is created, the charge calculation happens automatically. So that's where we come into the fourth pillar, which is the charge management and settlement pillar. So every freight order freight booking with a carrier assigned must have the charge calculation done automatically based on the agreement. And within an agreement, there are certain other components which basically helps you to decide the total charges. So called as a calculation sheet, rate table, scale. So we'll come into these terminologies later on. But you can say this is the pricing procedure. And the pricing procedure actually helps you to determine how much prices you have to pay to the carrier for their transportation service. So once my charge calculation happens in my freight order and freight booking, then the final the final step is to create a settlement document. So settlement document is like your shipment cost document. So shipment cost document, as you know, captures all the charges from the shipment document and then it goes to an accrual, right? The same process is done by the settlement document. So you see here, there is a settlement document called as a freight settlement. Don't be confused with the word forwarding settlement. This forwarding settlement is for an LSP scenario. For the carrier, we need to create a freight settlement document from the freight order. And once the freight settlement document is posted, it will create a service purchase order and service entry sheet so that you can do a three-way match using the invoice verification process. So all the charges that needs to be paid to the carrier flows into the service PO. Then in the service entry sheet, you can see the cost accounting document, the material document. And once that is done, then you can perform the invoice verification process in ECC. So the only thing what you need to understand here that freight settlement does not do any account determination. There is no GL account postings which is done in TM. All the different accrual postings, your GL account postings, your OBYC setup, all still follows the same process to be done in ERP. So ERP, all the account payable process is triggered. But the triggering point of accounts payable is the settlement which is done in TM. So with this, the entire flow comes to an end. So if you see, you have order, that means you have placed the requirement for TM, you have done the planning, you have done the execution, and now you pay the carrier and you settle up the books of accounts with. Any question here on the end-to-end flow?
We didn't allow this side. I
Yes.
do not see shipment anywhere in this flow. Is it because
Yes.
it's part of ECC we are not talking about, or it will be like,
Yes.
is
So I will
it
answer.
important?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I will answer your question in two different ways. So if you are working in S4HANA, okay, we don't need any shipment document because shipment document will be obsolete very soon with the, ultimately the, once the maintenance of Elytra is done, you'll not be able to see any shipment document in the SAP landscape as well. That is the main reason why SAP is replacing Elytra with SAP TM. So you don't need to have two different shipment documents for the same processes. So it will be a freight order and freight booking, which will ultimately be used to replicate to shipment. Because shipment has very limited information. When I'll open a freight order for you, you will see that there are a lot of information which is there in freight order, which typically represents a transportation process. And if you basically see the roadmap of SAP TM, and I'm quite sure all of you follow different journals and supply chain magazines. So as per the Gartner report, SAP's transportation management is the leading software solution. The reason for that is because of its integration capabilities. Because ultimately for a transportation guy, the shipment is the most important part for him. And this freight order is integrated across multiple applications within TM. Okay, so that's why if you are using TM, you don't need to bother too much about shipment document. Any question? Is it clear to everyone? The end-to-end flow?
Yes.
Okay. Now Okay, before I go into this, I think some of you have asked a question, what is the difference between 2PL and 3PL, right? Did I understand the question correctly? Was the question different?
So Anil here, somebody asked what is the difference between what are the 3PL and 4PL? Somebody asked earlier when you were explaining LSP and carrier.
Yes.
Maybe he is not here now.
Oh, okay. So do I answer that or I wait for him?
Let's wait. Let me check with him offline if we can connect, and then we can take it up again. Yeah. I think it was Manish, so I'll check with him separately.
Okay. So just to answer, 2PL is also called as a second party logistics provider. 3PL is called as a third party logistics provider, and 4PL is called as a fourth party logistic providers. Okay. So there are different bifurcation based on different functionalities which they perform. So as I told you, when you are talking about LSP, now this whatever I have spoken to you as of now is all shipper. Okay, I have not spoken anything for LSP because for shipper, transportation is not the core business. But when you come into the LSP scenario, if you see the main difference lies in the order management, rest all are same. So LSP stands for Logistics Service Provider. So they basically provide management and execution capabilities to shipper and other LSP. So besides the shipping functionality, this provider will also handle inventory, warehousing, packaging, and security functions for shipment. Now, the differentiation into different groups, that is your 2PL, 3PL, is completely dependent on what type of functions they are performing. So when I say 2PL, so 2PL means the LSP companies will directly execute transportation and logistics process for others using their own capacities and capabilities. That is, they will use their own fleet and storage capacity to directly execute the transport and the logistics process. So that's why sometimes the 2PL is also called as a carrier. Okay. Clear? Now, when I come across 3PL, so the 3PL and 4PL basically don't usually operate on their own fleet. That because they are much less asset focused than carrier. So carriers are always bringing their own assets like their drivers, their carrier, their trucks and all. But when we talk about 3PL, 4PL, they don't operate mainly with their own fleet. That is what I have seen in majority of the industry. So the main objective of this 3PL is to organize end-to-end shipment for shippers by basically, subcontracting its operation to a third-party carrier and all. So basically the carriers perform on behalf of the LSPs to do the transportation. So those are called 3PL.
So in such scenarios, why do we have 3PL or 4PL? Directly shipper can have carrier because at the end, LSP also outsourcing his work to the carrier only.
Yes, but carrier will not be responsible for warehousing, for packaging, for inventorizing, for doing the documentation clearance. They will not be doing all those.
Okay.
Carrier is just like a guy who will just come, you call them. For example, I want to pick up our goods. You just call them or book a trucker. So you have to prepare the shipment for yourself. They are not. So in case, when they are delivering the product, in case the customer is not there, they will just keep it there and go away because they don't have any place to store, right? They don't have any packaging mechanism. They don't have any way to get a clearance from the customers. They don't know the process to execute and plan the shipment of their own. Okay. What they do, they just pick and do the delivery. That's it. So in other way, so that's the difference where this 3PL will come into the picture along with 4PL. So in 4PL, they not only provide transportation service, but also they execute the entire shipment and they also do a redesigning and consulting for a lot of shippers. When I say redesigning and consulting means basically they also, prepare the plan of when to transport, how to transport, when to transport, where to transport, all the planning, execution. So sometimes they are also being hired by the shippers to do or set up the entire transportation process for different customers. So this 3PL, 4PL is at a much higher level as compared to carrier. Okay. So
okay. So we can say that any big organization, they directly have a 3PL or 4PL rather than having a carrier directly integrated to their business.
They may have, not will always have. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
They may have. Okay. Now I come into this part where basically, this is little bit a technical thing. The reason is when we talk about, nowadays the buzzword is this one, like S/4HANA, right? Obviously, today or maybe after a few days, you have to move into this platform. Okay. So that's why SAP has come up with different types of deployment options. It is very important to know this because if you are not sure about different types of integration, what SAP offers in terms of S/4HANA and all, basically it is not going to help you. The reason is after a few years down the line, anyway, you have to be in S/4HANA, right? So if you see this is basically the first version of S/4HANA which started with SAP Transport Management. Although we started with 1610, but basically the more releases came in 1709. So in the 1709, if you see there, so there are two different boxes here. So in 1610, SAP released the basic shipping, okay? And this basic shipping basically had the code line of Elytra. Okay, so when I say code line, these the basic functionalities of Elytra were still visible through basic shipping. There are very limited functionalities you can do using TM at that time. But with 1709, what SAP has done, they have added one more box called as a professional shipping. So these two are actually licenses. So whenever you are using basic shipping, so basic shipping is always focused and it is applicable for both S/4HANA as well as Elytra. When you are coming into professional shipping means it is actually the S/4HANA advanced license part. That means all the functionalities of your standalone transport management is available in S/4HANA. So that is why if you are using a basic shipping license, you don't have to pay any extra fees. But if you are using any advanced license, you need to pay extra fees to the SAP. And in the long-term view, actually, you will not be using Elytra. So we have removed Elytra from the picture. All will be done based on S/4HANA TM. So that's why when I say, so SAP in terms of Elytra, means Elytra module and S/4HANA module, there are few changes, differences in the model, in the functionality wise, you can say in terms of usage wise, in terms of end user experience, there are a lot of changes which you have. Also, in addition to obviously simplification. Okay, simplification is another reason why the S/4HANA product is there in the market, right? So for that reason, we have this differentiation. Okay. So that's what I have specified here, that there are two licenses. One is a basic shipping license and another is an advanced shipping license. So in the basic shipping license, you have the basic Elytra module still available, which is to be used by the customers. But when you are moving for the advanced license, every business user or company has to pay an extra amount for using this functionality. So they require a specific license, okay? And for that, per license wise, SAP charges you some licensing fees amount for that. So before I come into the deployment option, any questions so far?
So again, there is one more question on the same topic, this basic shipping license and advanced. Can you go back to that slide? Yeah. So basic shipping and professional shipping. So do we also need to have license for basic shipping, you said?
No. If you are in S/4HANA,
okay,
you will get this license automatically. You don't have to procure any license for that.
Okay. So
okay.
Do we have to, when we have basic shipping license, we will not have TM functionality into, so basically embedded TM means in the same box, I will have TM functionality if I have professional shipping license. Is that the statement?
No. So basically what happens when you are planning to install S/4HANA. So, okay, by default, nowadays you will have SAP TM as well as SAP EWM in the same box as S4HANA. Okay, that is one thing. So in the same server, you can access both TM as well as ECC. Now, which functionalities you can access without user license, that is defined by basic shipping and advanced license. So with basic shipping, you can perform very, very limited functionalities. Like for example, you cannot perform advanced planning. You cannot perform advanced charge calculation. You cannot perform any TM to EWM integration. You cannot perform any load planning features. So there are a lot of constraints you have when you are going with the basic license, because basic means it is just creating your particular freight unit. It will just create a freight order and a very standalone settlement process, and then it will create your service for service integration. That's it. Okay, that is the basic license. But if you want to do a planning, if you want to do an automatic planning using optimizer, if you want to do certain type of map-based planning, load planning, if you want to do certain type of features such as integration features, okay, in that case, it will not be support. So if you want to have the support of those features in your S4HANA, in that case, you have to use the advanced license. Okay. So I will send you a document where you can see what are the features which are available for basic shipping as well as advanced shipping. Okay.
Okay. There is one more thing which I wanted to ask. So if somebody like installs this go for S4HANA setup, do somebody needs to mandatorily have this basic shipping setup? Means somebody has to have this TM basic setup into the place, or can it go with so basic shipping and Elytra are complementing each other?
Yes.
Or okay, so basic shipping also has some TM functionality. You said basic setup like freight order.
Yes. Yes. Basic shipping you already have it.
So somebody has to use that basic functionality. Okay.
It's not mandatory.
Okay, that's what I wanted to ask.
Yeah, hi, Vinod, this is Ishmeet. I have one question. So if you're
Yes.
using Sidecar scenario and going to migrate to embedded HANA system, so for all the functionality that we use in a Sidecar, suppose 9.4 or 9.5, so we need a professional shipping license for that in embedded, right?
Yes, if you are using all the extensive features of your S4HANA SAP TM Sidecar 9.5, 9.6, you should go for an advanced license. As I told you, because very limited core functionalities are available with your basic shipping.
Okay.
Okay. So this slide will help you to clear a lot of doubts. So when I say deployment option, so deployment option means what? Anyone can clarify what do you mean by deployment option? Anyone has any idea? What do you mean by deployment option?
Deployment option could mean what kind of version we are going in for the transportation management system, or whether like on this slide we can see whether we want S4HANA, so we want it embedded, or whether we want it.
Yes. Correct.
Yeah.
So see, first of all, when you are going for any client project, maybe right now you are going into AMS, so you know the landscape quite well. But you know, when you are going for any architecting work, if you are going for any RFP work, any type of POCs you do, any type of implementation you do, okay, it is very important to know where, like what type of instances you are going to use for TM, right? So if someone says I'm going to use S4HANA, so that is actually, I would like to say a little bit in a vague way, because S4HANA can be anything, right? Means you need to specify, okay, I want S4HANA embedded or S4HANA decentralized. That will be a more better way to articulate your stance on the deployment. So deployment means how you are going to deploy transport management in your current landscape. So if you see, there are 5 deployment options. The first deployment option is generally the normal S4HANA embedded feature, where you see your entire ECC is on S4HANA application, your transport management also is on S4HANA. So when we have both the applications on S4HANA embedded, so this is also called as an embedded feature. So when I say embedded, see, the word itself is quite clear. Embedded means you don't need to have any separate server instances. It's a single server, single sign-on, single log-on credentials required. And when you just log into the system, you will find or you can enjoy the benefits of all ECC application as well as transportation management application. That is the meaning of embedded. Okay, so embedded means you don't need any separate SODs for that. No separate segregation of duties are required to set up by the security team. It's only a single instance. Now, when I say single instance, obviously you can have multiple clients within the single instance. Okay, you can have the 3-tier landscape as well. But even though if you are having a 3-tier landscape, still both ECC and S4HANA is in the same server box. So please make this clear, the concept of embedded. Embedded means single sign-on, single server. You don't need to log on into 2 separate credentials. Okay. Clear?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Now, the second deployment option is about your Sidecar. This is also, see, another word of Sidecar is decentralized. Why decentralized? Because it's not on the same server content like embedded. So if you see here, this is another option where your S4HANA and your transportation management is separated by a code line. So this code line is the middleware. It can be a PI or which can be a SOA manager, which is actually separating the application between two sides. So you need to transfer your data from S4HANA to TM, and also an update is required from TM to S4HANA. So you need 2 separate servers here. You need 2 separate instances here. 2 separate login credentials are required. And you need a monitoring mechanism for the transfer of your data from ECC to TM. So that's what we call it as a decentralized version. So in both this, both the servers of the systems are on SAP S4HANA. Does anyone know what is the meaning of S/4?
S/4.
Yes.
Simplified for HANA. Simplification basically.
Yes. So it's the 4th generation simplification business suite which has been launched by SAP. Okay. So hopefully we will not get any S5 or S6 for only, but I don't know what is SAP's roadmap for that. But as of now, we will be happy with S4 only. Okay. So this is the second instances. Now, can you tell me why or which client we try to have these instances? Or why you want to propose someone that both are in S4HANA, but I want to have separate server?
Maybe the one who is heavily utilizing transportation, and maybe the LSPs, they go for the sidecar or decentralized scenario.
Yes, you can say yes. Any other question? Any other input on this? See, this scenario comes into the picture when suppose, so there can be 2 variants to that. One variant, your SAP, your ERP client is already on S4HANA, but you want to have a separate server of SAP TM because you don't want to have the same release cycles of your implementation for both the systems at the same time. So first of all, I want to have a stability in my ECC system, then only I should go for the implementation of S4HANA for TM. That is another one reason maybe. Another reason maybe is that maybe, you know, my ECC part is going to have different upgrades and different types of lot of, you know, interfaces, frameworks, lot of RICEPs are there. And for that, you know, I don't want to mix that with my TM because TM I should go for a standard best practice business suite. Okay. So some of the other clients is that then why to in that way, why should I basically merge and mix both the applications in one? Because I have first to stabilize my ECC and then I should go for transport management. Or I don't want to mix my TM and my ERP application developments in one server so that to put extra load on the server. So that's why they do a segregation. So the segregation has to be understood from client's perspective. You can put your viewpoint, okay, because you'll see a lot of benefits are there when you are into S4HANA. That I'll come into the end of the part, what are the benefits. But the thing is that you need to understand and make them feel that, okay, if you are using S4HANA embedded, this is the benefit. If you are not using, then what is the rationale we are not using it? So you have to do a little bit of, your as-is scope study as well. And you see that what are the things which is there in embedded, which is not there in S/4HANA Sidecar. All these things will actually help you to make up the decision. Okay. Then comes the third instance. In third instance, we keep the right hand side instance same, but the ECC part is still in the old business suite, R3 ECC 6.0. So it can be of any HANA or it can be of any database. So in that case, what will happen? Sometimes this is the major scenario we see where currently the current client has too much of developments or enhancement done in your current ECC processes, and you don't need to migrate to S/4HANA as of now because you are doing some due diligence studies. You need at least a 1 year or 2 years stability to do all that. But when you go into the right hand side, in the right hand side, you can see the transportation management server and system. So there you can actually see, okay, my ECC is going to take time, but I need to implement my TM. So what I will do with my TM? So let's take TM on the latest technology only, which is a S/4HANA. Okay. So that is the third option you have. Now the fourth option you have is just the reversal of 3. So in case of this, your S/4HANA ECC is in S/4HANA, your TM is not in S/4HANA. Again, this is the thing which comes into the picture where you are perhaps working both on a long-term basis or where none of them were on S/4HANA, and now you have upgraded your SAP ECC system to S/4HANA. So the 3 and 5 are actually reverse of each other. And before SAP S/4HANA came into the picture, we used to have this. So this transport management is again a part of a sidecar. So if you see second, 3, 2, 3, 4, 5 are all sidecar scenarios. So the major difference between 2, 3 and 5 with 4 is in all of these 2, 3, 5, you have some server on S/4HANA. But in the fourth one, you see none of the instances are on S/4HANA. So this was the scenario much before 1610, where you have your SAP TM in a separate supply chain execution box, and you have your ECC, which is in ECC 6.0, and they are doing the standard documentation exchange and transfer across for application system for TM. So any question on this deployment options?
No questions, sir. It's clear.
So so now my question to all of you, what should be your selection criteria based on which you should decide whether it's sidecar or embedded?
So Anil here, so it depends on the business requirement and client requirement and their budget as well. So if they have budget and they want to move into S4, then we can do that. First, we will migrate our SAP TM to S4, then slowly we can migrate ECC server as well.
Okay. Yeah, you are right somehow.
For Greenfield, I would say, we would still propose the embedded S/4HANA if it's a Greenfield implementation, but if they're already on the ERP or they want to migrate to S/4HANA, then probably we'll give them the option number 2, so that they don't have to follow the same release, and option number 3, I believe, so that they can keep their ERP as is right now and to move the transportation to S/4HANA, and later they can move the other component also to S/4HANA. But the deciding factors are still the licensing cost, how they can, and what is the budget, what are the timelines, and are there any constraints involved regarding to performance and loading?
Yes, you're right. So basically, see, on the day 1, so when you are working on any type of proposals or solutioning work, obviously it is not possible to understand the requirement, all the requirements, right? So what you have to do, you have to first of all understand that, okay, whether I'm going to use the sidecar or embedded. So if you see, when we are doing for particular this embedded part, okay, if you see there is no middleware required because they are using the same S/4HANA instances. Okay, So when no middleware is required in embedded, that means there is no need to transfer any master data or transaction data across two servers, right? So what does that mean? The cost of ownership of the middleware gets reduced. Okay, because you need to have resources who has to monitor different transactions transfer. You have to also require the middleware to be kept up in order to transfer the master and transaction data, as well as any type of error messages are there, all the alerts, lot of communication to and fro happens. So if you see, this is a more simplified data model, what we call in SAP's terminology, simplification, right? So that simplification is achieved to a great extent when you are using S/4HANA. That is the main pros. Because if you are going in a decentralized, you need to send your master data from your source sender to receiver. You have to transfer your transaction data from sender to receiver, and all these are in a particular middleware. So you can use PI as a middleware, which will map your web services from your ECC to TM, or you can use SOA manager as a direct communication between TM to ECC. So obviously, and also SAP is also basically advocating hard to move into S/4HANA embedded so that you don't need to think about a separate server maintenance. But there is a catch, like I don't know who said, the licensing cost, that also you have to be considered, because the decentralized licensing cost is less costly. Again, please don't take it as an official comment from my end, just an observation. But SAP's rate changes based on the clients, because if you have a very strong client who has been using SAP for the last 15 to 20 years with a lot of licenses, obviously the cost of the advanced license is drastically reduced. I have seen that. Okay, so don't quote me anywhere, but it is just an unofficially I can see you, because your advanced license is a little bit more expensive as compared to the this one. So sometimes decentralized version can be opted out, but recommendation should always be to go with the standard, this embedded part, because that is what SAP is also advocating for. Okay.
You just mentioned one thing. I mean, if we propose an embedded one, the BI part will go away. I mean, we don't need any process integration here, right? I mean, between the ERP system and what the master data receiving. But we still have the BI component in place, right? If we need to connect to the external servers. So the licensing part is still there, right?
No, see, the thing is that it depends on what is the application usage of the particular TM. If you are having too much of interface, see, anyway, whether it's decentralized or embedded, any type of external, any type of B2B communication, you need to have a middleware. So this is what I am telling you in terms of A2A application, where A2A, that means both the applications are in the same SAP system. In that case, at least you can reduce the usage of PI. But anyway, if you are going to interact with any type of B2B communication, which is outside your SAP system, anyway, PI has to be used. There is no, alternative thinking. But like if you are having too much of usage of PI, obviously the licensing part also costs a lot of money, right? PI is also not cheap. It's quite expensive if you see it that way. And also you have to think about resourcing perspective. So a resource who is managing PI, from a B2B perspective, he cannot be responsible again to do all the monitoring from A2A perspective, because there are a lot of data transfer which happens between ECC to TM if you are working on a decentralized version.
Okay.
Okay. Yep. And the latest version what you have, okay, so in S/4HANA we'll have S/4HANA 2020. Okay, and in transportation management, we have the latest launching as TM 9.6. And SAP has decided not to extend any more feature beyond 9.6 because all the changes will now be done in S/4HANA. So you have to move to S/4HANA. You don't have any option actually. Okay. So and now come to the TM integration architecture. Please don't be misguided with this terminology TM 9.4, 9.5. Just forget the version now, because the version keeps on changing. Okay. And but the underlying architecture remains the same. Okay. So so if you see here, you can directly seeing the architecture on an overview level. That's where TM comes heavily on Elytra. because Elytra is not actually, has not adapted itself to talk with so many modules. It can talk with the shipment processes, but it cannot talk with different other modules with the same flexibility framework which TM has. That's why, because SAP's roadmap is TM, so all the new features, functionalities, developments, the custom products, enhancements, all this being done on TM only, not on Elytra. SAP is not funding anything on any type of new releases and core functionalities on Elytra. Okay, so be careful on that. So don't basically recommend TM now for any type of the shipment process, because that document will anyway be wiped off after certain years down the line. Now when I say integration architecture, so what do you mean by integration architecture? From the word itself, what do you feel?
It's TM integration with other SAP.
Yes. Just one thing I needed to tell you. Okay, so when we are working in either a standalone server or a S/4HANA server, the only difference lies in the order management. Okay, there are two additional documents which gets created in order management. So that is your OTR and BTR. And when you are working in S/4HANA, you don't have these two documents, because these documents are redundant objects, and unnecessary redundant objects basically slows down the performance of the system. So this is the major change what you have from your TM standalone to S/4HANA. Now when I come into the different integration part, so integration means to which other modules SAP transportation management talks of. Okay, so that is very important. So SAP transportation management talks both functionally as well as technically. So if I talk about first module as EM, okay. Can you just give me a minute? I just get a glass of water. Just give me 1 minute. Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes,
yeah. Okay. So when I come into the integration architecture, so as part of the integration architecture, first integration we'll talk about is event management. So event management is the tracking and the tracing module. So in any transportation management processes, I have, in fact, later on, I have some structure of flows on event management. So let me show you. Yes. Okay. So whenever you are going to monitor any type of business events means, for example, you want to monitor departure, you want to monitor loading process, unloading process, proof of delivery, arrival, check-in, check-out. So these are different milestones of any processes in transportation management. Okay. So in order to do that, okay, you need event management as a module in order to integrate with TM. Because unless the event management is there, so you can also live without event management. First of all, tell me that. Event management is not mandatory, but event management gives you real-time updates. It gives you an exception management feature. Exception management means, for example, if your transport was supposed to come at 6 p.m. but it is not able to come at 6 p.m. So that means there will be a delay, right? So because of the delay, it will impact the entire planning of the other subsequent process. So in that case, you need to send an alert to the corresponding transportation planner or the operational guy that, okay, my transport is going to come after 1 hour. Still the operational guy needs to be there in the warehouse for receiving the products, right? So in that case, an exception, alert, communication can be sent across in case the expected events become overdue. Overdue means 6 o'clock was the time of the planned event. It did not occur. It has become overdue because it has not been reported by someone. So that reporting can come from different sources, that come from carrier, can come from some external interfaces. But all the milestones of your transportation has to be mapped, and those reportings can either happen in TM or you can also use event management to report the events. But the major difference why we always propose event management, in case you are interested to monitor the milestones, is that it gives you a real-time update. You do not get real-time update when you are using transport management. That is the first thing. Second thing, if you want to know which are the events. So for example, you want to know the list of all events for a specific freight order, which has been reported or not reported. You can get a very good flexibility tool within event management to do that. But in case of transport management, you don't have any standard tool for that. What you have to do, you have to go into individual freight order, and there within an individual freight order, you have to look into individual events. But if you go into EM tool, in the event management tool, you can just give a selection criteria. Okay, please show me all the events from 1st of August to 8th of August, which has been reported. So if you give such type of criteria, automatically referencing different freight orders, the entire list you can retrieve. So there are a lot of features available within EM. Okay, you can also do a resource tracking. You can know where is your resource. You can do a asset tracking. You can also, so in case there are any discrepancies while delivering a product, you can also use the events to report those discrepancies. Okay, so in other words, event management is also called as a visibility tool, so that we have an entire visibility of your supply chain process. And the event management is integrated with TM for freight unit, freight order, freight booking. It does not have any integration with any settlement process or service order, whatever objects you have in TM. Only freight unit, freight order, freight booking are the objects with which you can integrate. And the communication between TM and EM is done within RFC communication. So in case any event is reported in event management, through RFC, it will automatically update in TM and vice versa. Any question between TM to EM? Clear to everyone?
So EM is also available in the embedded version, or it has to be taken as a separate server?
It has to be taken as a separate server.
Okay.
But you know, we do have some EM configurations available in
Yes,
TM
but it does not
9.4 and 9.5, right?
No, yeah. So that is there. See, there are two ways by which if you are working. Okay, I talked about S/4HANA, but if you are talking about decentralized, see, you can have a SCE box, supply chain execution box, and the supply chain execution box can have TM, EM, EW. That is one way. Okay. Another way, if you're also working in S/4HANA, you will see still the configuration, but because we don't have the event management within your S/4HANA, okay, that's why even though the configuration exists, but it does not work. There is no connectivity or linkage between EM and S/4HANA in that way. But around 1 or 2 weeks back, I heard from SAP that they are planning to have event management in S/4HANA as an add-on, but with an advanced license. That means you need to have the advanced license of transport management to talk with S/4HANA embedded event management as well. But event management will be an add-on. It will not come automatically. But that is still on an evaluation phase because we don't have any successful customer story on that because it just got released a week back. Okay. The next part is the EWM. Has anyone worked on extended warehouse? Anyone who has worked on extended warehouse management or warehouse management system?
Warehouse, not on EWM.
Okay. What you do in warehouse? If I say it that way. So in warehouse, basically you perform your picking, packing, staging, good issue, loading, etc. Right? That is how the warehouse activities are. But in addition to that, there are some other activities. There are certain warehouse tasks you need to do. There are a lot of other processes, value-added servicing, meeting, like production integration, quality inspection. There are so many things you can do in warehouse. But So that is a warehouse feature. But you can also integrate transportation management with extended warehouse management through through two different services. Okay. The reason why transport management can speak with warehouse management is that my planning in TM will drive the warehouse planning. So in other words, when I create my freight order can send a load plan to the warehouse, and based on the load plan transferred by warehouse to warehouse guy will basically wait for the truck to arrive, and then they will do the staging, good issue, picking, packing, everything. So that means here my transportation management is the leading force which drives the entire warehouse execution within EWM. Okay, so whenever finally when the good issue or the departure happens from your warehouse for a truck, it sends an update back into TM as well as ECC. So this entire integration or the touch point between ECC, TM and EWM is also possible using TM as a the sending system. And you can actually connect your transport management with the extended warehouse management. So you see that there is a direct web service. Okay. So in case you're using an embedded part, you can use a web service or a PI basically also to set up the transfer of data between TM to EWM and vice versa. So if you are using a S4HANA, you should use SOA Manager as the point-to-point or direct communication between both the systems. Okay. Clear?
Okay. So one question, like initially you said that for the embedded, when both ECC and TM are on S4 HANA, then it's like a single sign-on. So
yes.
In this case, when you were just mentioning for TM and EWM to talk to each other, I thought it just mentioned PI as well here as a middle.
Yeah, assuming it is not embedded.
Systems.
Assuming it is not embedded. Assuming your
Okay.
EWM is not in embedded, but it is decentralized. So
Okay,
see, you can have different architecture. I have seen one architecture where they had TM and S4HANA embedded and EWM was decentralized. Then how will you make decentralized EWM speak with TM?
Okay.
Okay, that's where you can use a PI as a middleware. But if you are having TM and EWM in the same server, you can use normal SOA manager. I don't know how much of you are aware of the SOA manager technique. It is also called as a WSRM, Web Service Reliable Messaging middleware technology. So that technology is actually very cheaper and very easy to monitor and manage rather than PI. Okay. So you can use that mechanism also to transfer your data from TM to EWM and vice versa. The third integration, what you have is with the GTS. So GTS, I told you, it's a global trade service. So global trade service means whenever you are actually transferring any type, or rather not transfer, I will not use the word transfer, but I will use the word communication. That means whenever you are actually doing any type of international shipment, you need to communicate the shipment information to your customs authorities. For that, there has to be an integration between TM and customs authorities. And for that, we use GTS. So TM and GTS talk to each other, and GTS through IDOC talk to your customs server. Because customs system is not in SAP. They are in non-SAP or legacy system. So GTS needs to receive the confirmation from my customs authority that, okay, this shipment can be moved from one source to another. And once that information is sent back by GTS to TM, then only the execution block gets removed. What does that mean? This means that unless I receive a confirmation from the customs authority, the execution block will remain and you cannot do any type of execution using TM. Okay. And this GTS can talk with, again, by two different things. Either this GTS can talk directly through your SOA manager also when you are using the web service direct, or you can also talk with through via PI. Okay. So when it is a direct service, it is a SOA manager. When it is an indirect service, it is always via PI. Okay. Next comes the ERP part. So I think ERP part, more or less, you guys will have an idea. So if you're working in S4HANA, you can have both a sidecar as well as a decentralized version. Okay. So when you are working in the S4HANA content, if you are using your S4HANA embedded, we don't need to have any mechanism to transfer your master data and transfer your transaction data because it's in the same system, right? But whenever you are using any type of decentralized or sidecar scenario, then you need to think about how to transfer your data from ERP to TM. So that's where you see there are there are two options. Option is one is direct, where you can use your SOA manager to transfer your data from ERP to your TM. And second is your indirect method where you can use PI. So PI has lot of services. So using that services, the source and the receiver can communicate. So every service carries a data segment. They have a data content. It's type of a package, you can say, which transfers the data from your source to receiver. So that's why whenever you are using ERP, in case you are using your S4HANA, you don't need any type of this because the communication between S4HANA, TM and ECC is done through RFC. So if you are doing a BGRFC setup, BGRFC means background RFC call. The background RFC call is the mechanism by which ECC and TM talk to each other in S4HANA. But if you are using a decentralized version or a sidecar version, then either you can use web service through PI or you can use also through SOA. And if you see, there is another button which is going up called as a SIF. SIF means if you want to transfer your master data from your ECC to TM, in that case, you need to use the SIF technology or framework to basically transfer that information from sender to receiver. Any question?
So the SIF technology is through the web service, right?
No, SIF technology is through queues. SMQ1, SMQ2. So when you are using SIF, that means the master data transfer is happening and that master data transfer is through SIF, through queues. But when you are transferring your transaction data, the transaction data transfer is always done using PI web service. And if you are using your S4HANA system, so in S4HANA, we always transfer the data from source to from TM to ECC using RFC. Because you are using RFC, you don't need any middleware between them. Okay, any question? You have got another few integrations, like for example, GIS. So GIS stands for Geographical Information System. The Geographical Information System means what? So for example, if you want to send the latitude, longitude, altitude for a specific location and to be provided by a specific service provider, then you can integrate that Geographical Information System to TA. Because based on the Geographical Information System, the latitude, longitude, altitude can be determined for a particular location. And then it will help you to maintain the actual distance and duration taken to cover a particular transportation process. So that's the usage of GIS. But if you are using a GIS, basically like Nokia or other service provider, you need to buy a server or license for them to interact with them. So in case you are using a GIS, again, the integration of GIS can be done through web services direct, or if you are using an indirect via, if you want to do indirect communication, you have to do it via IGS. And that IGS talks with TM using RFC. Okay.
IGS would be?
Is an integrated geographical system or indirect geographical system. Okay. And the most important part here is this optimizer. So as I told you in the 4 pillars of TM, that you can do the planning part either manually or automatically, right? If you remember this. So when you will be doing the planning part can be done either manually, that is your interactive planning, or automatically. And as part of the automatic planning, so in that case, you need to have the optimizer in the system. So this optimizer is the engine. You can say it's an engine which runs in C++ language, and that engine actually does the planning for TM. So you have to install an optimizer if you want to do all automatic planning. And automatic planning is lot of functionality is there, but many clients don't use optimizer. I'll tell you what are the different constants we have later on. But many clients is still especially for transportation business, because you already have a predefined carrier, predefined charges to be paid. So why to invite an engine which will do the planning based on the data? So in case some data changes, then your entire output gets changed. So that's why many clients still wants to go with the manual planning rather than automatic planning. But if you want to do automatic planning, you have to use optimizer, and the version is 13.0. Rather the latest one is 14.0. Okay.
So this optimizer is not inbuilt within TM box?
No. And it is only available in advanced license, not with basic license.
Okay.
Okay.
And the regular TM, which is means non-S4 TM, it also needs to connect separately with optimizer, or is it inbuilt within that?
No, see, whether it's standalone, whether it's this one, you have to always install optimizer.
Okay.
Optimizer is a component. Okay, so that component installation has to be done irrespective of what version you are using.
Separate license is needed for this optimizer.
Yeah, for S4HANA, yes.
And if like TM is connected through ECC, then also.
Yeah, if it is connected through ECC also, that is the standalone you were saying. Okay, in that case, I have seen, see, optimizer installation and connection is not very complex in terms of license fees. Also, it's quite very negligible. Okay, so depending on the client, you know, sometimes SAP do not charge anything, even if you are working on your standalone server. But if you are working in S4HANA, and in case you want to have the advanced license, then only you can get optimizer with that paying of additional cost.
Okay.
Similarly, you can also have and that connection or updates is based on RFC. You can also have an connectivity with ADS. ADS, I think all of you know that in case you want to do any printout of any forms and all, the Adobe forms, in that case, you have to build up an RFC with the Adobe server. You can also have an integration with BI, BW. So in case you need to perform some analytical contents, analytical analysis, in that case, the business information warehouse content can be used there, which is called as a BI and BW. You can also have an integration with modules such as CRM. You can also have an integration with yard logistics. Yard logistics means suppose the truck is entering the yard and you need to monitor where is your truck, whether the truck has performed check-in, whether loading has been done, unloading has been done. So the entire movement of the truck within the yard can be integrated between TM with yard logistics. So if you want to have that, then you can also have an option to integrate with yard logistics as well. Okay. Any more question? Clear to everyone?
Yeah.
And this is the last slide for today. Okay. Because tomorrow onwards we start with the org structure. So there is a slide which is called as a terminology. Why I have included this slide? Because sometimes, you know, because we are all from ECC background. So sometimes it's very important that it should stuck in our mind what those particular business objects does. So when I say business object means where the different transactions are taking place, those are called business objects. So there are a lot of business objects in TM. So if I talk about, you know, if you remember, I told you about OTR. So all of you know about this sales order, purchase order, stock transfer order, right? So these are also called as these generates the transportation demand. So all these objects are actually representing sales, procurement or transfer, right? And so the demand in your TM is actually raised based on these methods. Okay. Then you have got other objects called as an OTR or DTR. So in case of Sidecar, what happens? This is only applicable for Sidecar because in S/4HANA you don't have these objects because these are again redundant objects. So whenever you want to transfer or link your sales order with your transportation management process, we have a document called as a OTR. OTR means order based requirement. So order means all the orders which is created in ECC will be linked to your TM through your OTR. Similarly, when you are creating an outbound or inbound delivery, that can also create a DTR. So OTR is not mandatory. DTR is mandatory because you can still live without having the transportation demand not generated from order but from delivery. Okay. Then we have an object called as a forwarding order. So forwarding order is the starting point for any type of LSP scenario. So if you go into this, I told you that for shipper it ends here. But if you're working for an LSP, you need to start on with the process called as forwarding order. And that forwarding order will create a freight unit automatically. So instead of using these documents, you use this document for forwarding order. The forwarding order is actually the object for LSP scenario. Okay. So here the shipper and the customer needs to agree with the definite terms and conditions. And based on that, the forwarding order will create a freight unit automatically. The next object we'll see is freight unit. So freight unit is the smallest unit of transportation. When I say smallest unit of transportation means it can be a cargo, it can be product, it can be a package, it can be a container, it can be any type of handling unit equipment. So whatever you want to transport, that is a freight unit. So whenever you are transporting something, you always need to know what are you transporting, where you are transporting, when you are transporting. And always note that this freight unit is always linked to your shipment document. So freight order, freight booking always will have a linkage with your freight unit. Any question till now on the left hand side? Clear to everyone?
Yes. Yep.
Then we come to the right hand side where you have some terminologies called as a freight order, freight booking. I think this is quite clear to everyone. So these are my shipment documents. This is also called my execution document, or this is also called as my subcontracting document. So in case you are planning to move your transport using sea or air, we call it as freight booking. And whenever you want to transport using road and rail, we call it as a freight order. In addition to that, we have got some other master data. First of all is a resource. Why resource is important? Because if you are moving your transport from point A to point B, for example, you need some resource to move them, right? Without involving resources, the transportation cannot happen. Similarly, if you are planning to move from port to port, you need a vessel. If you are moving from airport to airport, you need a flight. So all these are resources. So every resource has a capacity, and you need to make sure that the capacity of the cargo which you are transporting should not exceed the capacity of the resources. In addition to that, we also have schedules. So again, this is a master data. So again, when I come into the master data, I will show you in details. So schedule means it is a sequence of stops. So basically, for example, suppose if you are traveling from Mumbai to Hyderabad every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you are catching the Indigo flight. So Indigo will have a schedule every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. right? So based on that flight's departure, schedules are created. So schedules will actually provide you an overview of the arrival and the departure date. And by doing that, you can also create a freight order, freight booking from a schedule. Because in a freight order, freight booking, we generally have your loading date, unloading date. So the loading and unloading information in your freight order, freight booking can be captured also from schedule. Because in schedule also, you have arrival date, departure date. And finally, you have the settlement documents, trade settlement. I think all of you know as of now that This is the shipment cost document. So the document which is posted so that your service PO and service entry sheet is created is called as a settlement. So if you see here for a shipper, once my settlement document is created, it inherits all the information from my freight order. But when I'm talking about my forwarding settlement, so forwarding settlement is an LSP terminology which is always created from a forwarding order. So in case, so for example, I am a customer, I want to have my shipment from Germany to USA. I call up DHL or FedEx. I tell them to transport my goods. Now, while they do the transport, I have to pay them, right? So that means if you are implementing TM for DHL or FedEx or UPS, you need to install SAP in their own premises. And because you are getting a payment from the customer, okay, in that case, what I will do, I have to create a settlement document. So that settlement document is also called as a forwarding settlement. So this forwarding settlement is a revenue to my LSP because it will ultimately create a billing document. And freight settlement always create a invoice document. So freight is always my cost and billing is always my revenue. And this forwarding settlement document will always be created with a forwarding order. That means once a forwarding order is created, now I as a DHL or FedEx know how much I will be paid by the customer. So I can do an automatic charge calculation and then I can trigger my settlement process to do my billing document. So these are some of the terminologies you have. So please let me know in case you have any understanding issue of any other topics. Any question from anyone?
What is the exact, sorry, I may have missed this. What is the exact difference between this forwarding settlement document and the freight settlement document?
Freight settlement document, first of all, can be applied for both LSP as well as shipper, and it pertains to the payment to a carrier. So settlement document is a shipment cost document. Okay, so you create this settlement document to settle your accruals when it is transferred to ERP. But when we talk about forwarding settlement is not applicable for a shipper. It is only applicable for your LSP scenario or freight forwarding industry scenario. So the output of forwarding settlement, when you post a settlement, it will create a billing document. And when you post a freight settlement, it will create a service PO, service entry sheet followed by MIDA.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Any other question from anyone?
Viren, just to addition to what Kriti asked, like when you said forwarding settlement document will be only in LSP scenario, so it will be posting to other system because LSP might not be having their own ECC because they don't need it. Correct?
Yes, we can post in case ECC is not there for LSP, then the posting can happen in other non-ECC system as well.
Okay, okay.
And I just tell you, LSP is not a very favorite implementation for TM. Very few companies have implemented TM for LSP. But for shipper, it's the majority, or I'll say maximum, for TM is being used for shipper.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Thank you for attending the session. I hope you all enjoyed it. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Also feel free to ask your questions in the comment section below, and we will reply to them at the earliest.